Hi, everybody. My name is Mark W., and I am in recovery. I want to thank you guys for watching my first video presentation last week. And for those of you who subscribed, would encourage you and invite you, for those of you who are watching this video, if you'd like to subscribe, share it with your friends, let them know that I am doing these videos every week. And I'm just making sure that I'm on here. I believe I am. So we'll go ahead and get started here. Looks like I am. Okay. Very good. I'm still kind of new at this technology stuff. So anyway, last week, as you know, we talked about power outage. And what I'm going to do each week is I'm going to cover about 4 talks on each of the 12 steps of recovery. So we are still on the first step, which is we admitted we are powerless over our behavior and that our lives have become unmanageable. Want to mention at the beginning that if you would like a copy of the material that I'm using for tonight's presentation, you can email me at mwhitman185@gmail.com. Or if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to send them to that email or comment on the channel itself. So tonight, the title of the presentation is called, What Time Is It? I thought about this topic because for those of us who get into compulsive or addictive behavior, time is one of those things that always gets away from us. In fact, I know that in the throes of my own addictions, I would lose track of time. In fact, I purposely wanted to lose track of time. If there was anything I was concerned about time, it was carving out enough of it in order to do what I wanted to do. If I wanted to go to the casino, for example, I would make sure that it would be on a day that I cleared all my appointments and any responsibilities I had, and then it would go from there. If I happen to have something in the evening, if I went in the morning, I would think about maybe I'll come back and I'll make that appointment. But what happened a lot of times would be I would end up calling and canceling that appointment at the last minute, which is not being responsible. So my experience has been that time is something that we don't really keep track of. What we do keep track of, though, is how much and how long we like being on our addictive behavior, which left to ourselves and to enough of the resources that feed that behavior, it would be all the time, or until we finally just got exhausted and had to take a break. So tonight, as I did last week, just some key words for us to think about, and they're going to be based on time. And what you're going to hear in the background also is I'm in a part of the place that I live that has a grandfather clock just outside this door. So about every 15 minutes or so, you're going to hear the grandfather clock going off, which is rather interesting background for talking about time. And the clock itself is about 7 minutes fast, so it's not going to be exact on the time that you may have. But the first word to discuss would be the definition of the word time itself. Time is defined as the indefinite, continued progress of existence and events in the past, present, and future, regarded as a whole. So we're always confined to time, whether we want to accept that or not. We're always moving forward. We can't stop time. We can't go back in time, nor can we run ahead into the future. And yet, my experience has been, when I've been caught up in compulsive behavior, I spend a lot of my time trying to fix the past, worrying about it, and then getting anxious about the future, and then not spending the reality of where time is, which is in the present. So we talk about varying degrees of time. So another word is called the past. It's defined as gone by in time and no longer existing. So even at the start of this video, I know it's pretty obvious, that is already in the past. In fact, every single second that goes by goes right into the past. The present is something that is hard to grasp, and yet that is the only period of time that we have control on. So what we do with the time of the past is that we dwell on it and we reflect on it. Then there is future time. Future time would be the period of time following the moment of engaging in the present. So right after this, we have future going on. In the future will be more things I will say. The only time that is real for us is the present. Now, why do I spend a lot of time defining these different aspects of time? Well, because I have discovered in my own struggles and yet in my own recovery, that's what I spent my time doing. It's dwelling on the past, even trying to revise the history, and then worrying about the future and what will happen because of what I'm doing in the present. And we live in a society, we live in this age where we are always scheduled to do things. We use our phones, we use our tablets, we use our PCs, and we're always scheduling things that come up next. I know that for my job, my responsibilities, I need to have a calendar and I need to schedule the different things that I'm doing. And I need to look ahead to see what I'm doing for my day. But for those of us caught up in a compulsive or addictive behavior, it doesn't matter that much. As a matter of fact, we try to avoid even wanting to schedule anything. Because by not scheduling anything, it gives us more freedom to do what we want to do. You know, we think about when we're younger, not having a lot of responsibilities. We had other people kind of telling us when it was time for dinner, when it was time to do this or that. We usually had our parents when we grew up. I know that my mom and dad would always let us know ahead of time, my brother and I, when it was time for anything to go on. And I just relied on that. But as I got older, I had to learn for myself, as we all did, on how we schedule time to do things and how much it took to get anything accomplished, or to perform a responsibility or fulfill a promise. So, as I mentioned, as people engaging in compulsive addictive behaviors, we dwell on the past, we obsess about the future, and yet we ignore what is right in front of us in the present. We spend our time on those things that no longer exist, trying to attain what we want or worry about, and what will happen to us that does not even exist yet. I know that someone once told me, don't borrow trouble. And when I was in the throes of my addictive behavior of gambling, I was always worried about what if people found out? What's going to happen now? Always worried about what was going to happen in the future. And then trying to cover my tracks of stuff I did in the past. And if I shared anything with anybody, it was never accurate as to what I was doing. It was always something more. I never really lost all that money at the casino. I broke even. Or if I won, I would exaggerate how much I won. So the past, we always try to look at as the best part of what we are so that we can communicate that somehow to cover our tracks, to make ourselves look better than what was really happening. I know I did a lot of that. I would let people know what I did, and it would never be exact. And yet on the inside, I am worried about people finding out in the future and me getting into trouble because of what I was doing. Maybe some of you had that similar experience. So think about any kind of behavior that you're kind of struggling with right now. How does time connect with that? I know that for myself, I seem to have had a lot of free time. What I mean by that is, when I wasn't doing my job, there seemed to be this lag time of that time in between varying responsibilities and events that were happening. And I had a very difficult time. In fact, I still have a challenge as to how I organize my day and to follow through on what it is I want to do for myself. When it came to myself, I wouldn't schedule time very well at all. But when it came to other people, I was really good about, in fact, I'm very good even to this day about scheduling my time correctly so that I'm not disappointing anyone and I'm fulfilling the promises and commitments that I've undertaken. But when it came to myself, like for example, I'm going to exercise every day. Okay. You may even schedule time to do that. And yet, since it was just for me and only thinking about myself, I would say, I don't feel like it today. So I wouldn't follow through. But of course, when I wanted to go gamble, well, I followed through very well on that. In fact, I scheduled that and I had a routine as to what I would do. I carve out that time on a particular day and I would get excited about the fact that I would get to have this time to do what I want. How much time it would take to go to the bank, withdraw the money, which casino am I going to go to, how long will it take me to get there, and then where would I want to start? Where would I want to start my day? Would I want to start at the video poker machine and spend a couple of hours there, or maybe just an hour, maybe hopefully getting ahead and then getting enough money then so that the next part of the day would be to go to the blackjack table and to find out how much I could win with the money that I apparently had gotten ahead of in my video poker playing. And then I would stop and say I would take a break for lunch and get something to eat. I'll be back in time for dinner and no one would know what I was doing today. You know what would happen? None of that ever followed through. I usually would walk into the casino. Now, all the other things happened, going to the bank, taking out the money, because back in those days, that's what I did, or running down to Schnucks and cashing a check, and then getting there at the casino. I always liked going in the early to later part of the morning because to me, it all felt fresh and clean, and it was like the beginning and a fresh start of a new day, and this is going to be the day that I'm going to really cash in and really do well. And then I would end up just sitting at that video poker machine. Very rarely would I end up getting to the blackjack table. And even if I did, it would be trying to catch up with what I lost because I had already run out, gotten more money, started using the credit card. And then before I knew it, it was getting close to the time I needed to get back. Well, then I need to make a phone call and cancel that appointment or let people know I won't be there. In fact, I even did gathering with friends or family. I would call, make up something that I had something else came up and I'm not going to be able to make it. And I ended up just staying at the casino. And then I would get back. A lot of times if I was able to have enough money, winning enough to stay, I would get home sometimes before sunrise or even at sunrise. And then act like I came home in a decent enough time. And then I'd spend that whole next day trying to play catch up with my job and working on little to no sleep, little to nothing to eat because I never did get anything to eat. I never did stop for lunch. You see the craziness of getting caught up in a compulsive behavior does? Time became useless to me. And then when somehow I'd come to my senses, usually as I had my head down, leaving the casino and walking in the parking garage looking for my car with my head down, talking to myself and yelling at myself for what I just did, because most of the time I would lose. Then it was about going back and then trying to figure out how am I going to fix the past of what I actually did with what I'm actually going to tell people. And then worrying about what if I get caught, or what if people find out, or they start getting concerned about me, and this whole thing will have to stop. Of course, I was always dedicated to saying, this is the last time I'm doing this. This is crazy. Why would I do this to myself? Why am I doing this to other people? And then I'd have this, I'd have those moments of regret. But then it quickly went to, how am I going to cover my tracks? And then after a couple of days, I'd get over it. I'd look at how far behind I was with bills coming up. And the only solution I seemed to have had was to go and somehow try to figure out how to get money to get back to the casino and go through the whole thing all over again. What kind of routine did you have or do you have with your addictive or compulsive behavior? Is there one? For any other addictions, I don't know, people who have a problem with drinking, was it going to a certain bar or a certain time of day or in the evening? Was it something that you had a particular plan in mind and then that plan just kind of went to the wayside as the more time you spent drinking and hanging out with people and figuring out, always readjusting what you had to do to get home and well, I can take off tomorrow because I'm getting home too late. I can call in sick. I can just tell people I was out with friends, or it was a person I had to take care of, whatever. All the lies that I know I told myself and told other people, trying to fix the past so it didn't look so bad, and never ever paying any attention to the present of what I was doing, because it was only in the present that the truth was there, that I did not want to take a look at. So the reality of spending most of my time of a day in a casino, gambling my money away. And then, of course, those few times I would win, well, then, winning, that was like taking a drug that the high lasted all day and however many days before I went back to the casino. Because then I felt I had this false sense of control. I even called it my second job. I come home. I remember one night coming home with a bunch of money and just feeling so high. I didn't need to go to sleep. I was on top of the world. I was in a great mood. Calling this my second job. And all I need to do is keep building on that. I'll get all the money back. And it would last for a little while until the risk taking would just get higher and higher and higher. The more I would win, it would just mean the more that I would bet. Soon betting $100, $200 a hand playing blackjack. Because the moment in which you get that reward of feeling good or feeling nothing, it doesn't take that same amount of time to get back to that level. It takes even more of that addictive behavior to get to that same point of the first time you felt high or felt different or felt what you wanted to feel. It never just works with just this amount of drinking, of eating, of smoking. For some people who may be struggling with pornography, codependency, you name it, the initial time that you got that high and felt really good and felt rewarded, it takes much more of that in order to get to that same point you felt the first time. So for myself, the first time I may have won a couple $100 and I felt like, oh, that's awesome. Well, in the future times that I would go, $200 was nothing. It was one hand of playing blackjack. It had to be 2,000. And then I get to that point. Then it had to be more. Maybe that's your experience when you were drinking. The first time you got high or drunk, your favorite drink, and it was only a couple of drinks. And then you found out it took a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And then you had stresses going on because you're putting off things, which means you had to have this more. Meanwhile, time is just slipping away. As I look back, there was a lot of time that I wasted. Now, I can spend my time dwelling on that and really beating myself up about it. Or I can say, that no longer exists. That was in the past. If there's anything I want to look back on is to discover what I may learn from what I did, in order that it may help me in the present. And if I can discover those insights of what I did in the past, they're going to help me, prevent me, or decrease me from doing that again, then maybe my future will look a little bit better. Because there is a certain point that I looked at my future and I go, I don't know where this is going to take me. I don't know how much longer I can do this. So, again, we live in the past and worry about the future. Recovery, though, brings us to the present. Recovery must be in the present moment. In fact, what we discover is that it's only the present that we control. And there's power in the present. I can choose to get up right now and leave and not finish this talk, or I choose to stay and complete it. A lot of possibilities, endless possibilities that can happen in the present. We have control of that. So recovery bringing us to the only time that's real in this present moment. This is where truth, healing, and wisdom exist. Truth, the reality of who we really are. discovering that we have a problem, discovering that there's a challenge within us that we need help with. In the present, making a decision to make a phone call, to share with somebody what's going on. Maybe to do something that's going to be good for ourselves, that's good and healthy. Going for a walk, reading a book, maybe reading up on the particular issue we're having and gaining some knowledge from somebody else that may have the same issue. Going to a meeting, listening to other people who have those same kinds of issues and problems. This is the only place that we exist. And I would say there's a acronym for those of us who've been in recovery. You may have heard this in the different meetings and different materials that you've read. An acronym called HOW: honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. This is how we live in the present. The more honest we are, the more in the present we are. The more open-minded we are to listen to people who care, who are speaking to us truth that's going to be helping us. We have control to be able to accept that and to take it, to help it transform us. And then to have the willingness to be able to choose now, only in the present moment, to do what needs to be done. You can't go to the meeting yesterday, and you can't get help in the future. You can only do that now. But I know I would spend my time procrastinating and putting off those things I know I needed to work on. That sound familiar? It's not that bad right now. But down the line, if it gets to this certain point, then I'll say something to somebody. If I get drunk one more time this week, and if I wake up late and I don't make it to work on time, then I'll say something to somebody. You know, we always want to try to plan the future and control what we're going to do in the future. You can't control what you do in the future. You can't control what has already happened in the past. Nor will you find, if you've ever had a weird prayer that you ever prayed to God, almost like, God, can you invent for me a time machine for me to go back and change everything to where I didn't do all that stuff so that I'm now in big debt right now? Or that I didn't gain all this weight because of all the food I ate? Or I didn't smoke all those cigarettes so that I don't have these health problems now? Because that's basically, we may have never said that in our prayer, but that's basically what we're saying. God, I want you to take me back into the past and fix all that. Because I don't want the responsibility of the consequences of what I've done that I'm dealing with right now. And then go into the future and get everybody to just accept that everything's okay and they're going to jump in and they're going to help you. And everything's great. Never happens. And yet we'll dwell on two things that aren't even real, nor do they exist: the past and the future. Talk about what fed my addiction. It was trying to take care of those two periods of time and missing out on what was going on right now. So many missed opportunities. So many ways in which my higher power was maybe giving me hints or clues as to what I could do. And me saying no to those. Because yet I still had control over what I want to do. When in fact, my life had become unmanageable. The only schedule that I followed was how long and how much I could participate in my addiction. That's the only choices I was making. And even then, it was just kind of going with it and seeing how far I could go. And then trying to come up with stories and trying to cover myself because I didn't want anybody to be worried about me. Because then that would mean I'd have to stop. And why would I want to do that? I'm on such a roll right now. So, honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. This is how we live in the present. Those three things are going to be very important for us. So, if we want to know where powerlessness lies, it exists in the past and the future. Nothing we can do about either one of those. It's already existed, and it doesn't even exist yet. So there's nothing we can do about either one of those. Nothing at all. Not even God can help us with that, or a higher power. We and our higher power do not have any power in those. In fact, we don't even exist in those two areas. There is true power only in this moment right now. I have control and I can make decisions to do something right now. The more that we can keep ourselves in that moment, think of all the different things we can do if we just stay focused on the now and the how we get recovery. Because placing power in the past and in the future makes us sick. The word sanity and insanity, the word sane coming from the Latin word sanus, which means health. Insanity means unhealthy. Anything that goes against what is real in our lives, and the big one is time and where we belong, trying to change that makes us sick. It causes a lot of problems. It hurts our health. It hurts our relationships. Who of our friends or family want us to keep going to them and talking about the past all the time? Or who of our friends or family want us to constantly be going to them and talking about how much we were worried about the future all the time? After a while, no one wants to listen to that stuff. What they do want to hear is where you're coming from right now. What's going on? Be honest with me. What are you feeling and what are you thinking? That can only happen now. As I mentioned a little bit before, we base our time measured by the involvement we have in our addictive behavior. So an example would be, it's 2:15 beers. I hope to get home by 10 beers. Or it is 1/2 video poker. And I hope that I can be back by $1,000 in blackjack. The quantity of our behavior is what we measure our time with, not time itself. That's why we lose track of time. That's why we never know what time it is until we look. In fact, I've never been to Las Vegas, but maybe some of you have. And I know that in certain casinos and so forth, they will give artificial daylight when it's like 3 a.m. And it'll pump in fresh air so that you don't even know what time it is, so that you can continue to stay focused on your gambling and having fun and not having to sleep. Your time clock gets all messed up because I don't notice anybody who's in their addictive behavior having fun looking at their watch all the time. Or if you are, it's trying to figure out how you can cancel something or how you can cover yourself. But it's never about yourself. You're just going to stay and continue. So the quantity of our behavior is what we measure our time by. How much has that happened to you in your life? I have a reflection here that I wrote, and it's called Recovering Time. And it's going to sound a little familiar to the closing reflection I'm going to have later on. So, a time to wake up and a time to go to sleep. A time to think and a time to ruminate. A time to feel and a time to feel nothing. A time to dwell on the past and a time to misremember it. A time to worry and a time to not care. A time to tell the truth and a time to change my mind in telling the truth. A time to lie and a time to say it's nobody's business. A time to gamble and a time to drink. A time to take drugs and a time to overeat. A time to fantasize about my future and a time to wonder when I will die. A time to get tired and a time to get tired of feeling tired. A time to give up and a time to give in. time to wonder what time it is, and a time to say, I have time to change. The present time seems oblivious to me. All my time is spent fixing the past and manipulating the future. There is no time in addiction except time lost. There is no higher power when I'm getting high. There is no hope when I fill myself with alcohol. There is no responsibility when I gamble my money away. There is no self-care when I could care less about myself. What time will I take the time to live in the present time of recovery? Time will tell. Some questions for you to discern. How much of your time is spent on your compulsive or addictive behavior? Being honest with yourself. And please have people around you that you can trust when you start becoming honest with yourself about certain things that you may have a problem with, that you're getting concerned about. What does a normal daily routine look like for you? Where do you spend your time? What goes on throughout the daily routine of your life each day? Do you find you spend your time dwelling on the past, spending a lot of time trying to fix it, rewrite it, change it, or worrying about the future, spinning your wheels in anxiety about what's going to happen to me now? What are you missing when you are aware of the present time? Again, I just want to say this again. All the power in the world is given to us right now. Right now, we can make decisions in what we want to do. It's the only freedom we have. It's not in the past, and it hasn't even happened yet in the future. I do have a final reflection. As I mentioned, the reflection I just gave you before is based on similar structure. Those of you who are familiar with the Old Testament, the book of Ecclesiastes, it's that famous passage about time. There is an appointed time for everything, and a time for everything under the heavens. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to uproot the plant. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to tear down, and a time to build. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones, and a time to gather them. A time to embrace, and a time to be far from embraces. A time to seek, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to cast away. A time to rend, and a time to sow. A time to be silent, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time of war, and a time of peace. He has made everything appropriate to its time, and has put the timeless into their hearts, without man's ever discovering from beginning to end the work which God has done. So, my friends, if you're watching this, you may be watching out of curiosity and wondering what this is all about. Some of you may be participating in this because you're trying to find maybe a solution or trying to figure out how you're handling stuff and how you can handle that better. If you find yourself dwelling on the past, it means you're beginning to recognize that maybe there's an issue here that I need to take care of. If you're worrying about the future a lot, it means that you're afraid that something's going to happen to you. But if you're focused on the present, it means you have real hope and that you're willing to make the change, that you know how. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. Be true to yourself. Be true to others. Now is the time to make the change and allow your higher power to help you in your recovery and to live a healthy life. Weekly goal, something to consider. Pick one day this week and simply observe how you spend your time. Again, if you like the video, please hit the like button. If you'd like to continue to be a part of these each week, I will be doing these each Sunday night at 9 o'clock Central Time. Hit the subscribe button. If you'd like a copy of the material that I used for tonight, again, my email is mwhitman185@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to send it to you. Any comments or questions, you can send them by email or to make comments on the channel itself. I hope everyone has a good week. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other.